Shalom, my people. I figure it's time for me to put up a video, okay? This is what I want to talk about. You know, there are a lot of people out there that claim to be followers of Yeshua, Jesus, Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Messiah. But when you really look at their teachings, they really don't follow him, they follow Paul. What do I mean? You ask the average Christian. Let's just talk about Christianity. Although we are not Christians, but we do follow Yehoshua, the Messiah. Listen, now many say that they follow Jesus, but when they start talking about scriptures, you ask them, well, do they keep the law? And they say, well, no, we don't keep the law. The law, Paul said this and Paul said that we are no longer under the bondage of the law, and this is that and the other through because of the sacrifice of Jesus. But then I would ask them, I would say, well, I asked you, was you a follower of Jesus, a follower of Yeshua? I didn't ask you if you was a follower of Paul. What did Jesus say about the law? And see, most of them get stumped right there because they don't realize Matthew 5, he said, think not that I have come to destroy the law, but that I may uphold it, fulfill the law. He said, until heaven and earth pass away, not one jot, not one letter of my word will be changed. He said, and those that break my laws and teach others to do so shall be the least in the kingdom of heaven. But those who keep my laws and teach others to keep my laws, those shall be great in the kingdom of heaven. You can even go to Matthew 25 where he says that everything else shall pass, but my word is going to stand. My law, my Torah is going to stand. So the question is, if you following Yehoshua, if you following Jesus, why do you not keep the law? I mean, well, they'll say, well, we keep the 10 commandments. But when you ask them the things that they don't do, they'll say, well, we believe you aren't supposed to commit fornication. You're supposed to treat people right, and you're not supposed to steal, and you're supposed to respect your mother. And they always list all of the things that deal with the relationship of man to man because they want to be good people. You know what I'm saying? And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be a good people. But if you claim to be a follower of Jesus, a follower of Yehoshua, then it's not about being a good person. It's about being a godly person. You know what I mean? So they will list all the things in the 10 commandments, the last 6, but they always forget the first 4. The first 4 talks about put no other God before me, making no graven image, to bow down and worship, calling out the Lord's name in vain. It also talks about the Sabbath day and keep it holy. They always want to skip over all of that. You see what I'm saying? And they want to follow the teachings of Paul. But Peter said some of Paul's teachings are hard to understand. Most people don't realize that Paul was a Pharisee. He was very educated and very well learned and versed in the Hebrew Torah, in the first 5 books of the Bible. He was a master when it comes to the law. You see what I'm saying? But he didn't understand the concept or the precept of the spiritual part until Yehoshua revealed it to him. You see what I'm saying? So a lot of times people don't realize that Paul is not telling you to do anything opposite than what they were already doing, except for the fact to recognize that your Messiah had came. You see what I'm saying? And he was prophesied of in the scriptures. So how can you claim that you are a Christian and you don't keep the law? Because Yehoshua kept the law. You claim you follow the one you call the Christ, but you don't follow the laws, and that doesn't make any sense. So what I would say to you is you're a follower of Paul. You know what I mean? You have to understand that even though Paul said a lot of things, the trump card are the teachings of Yehoshua. You see what I'm saying? And you always have to fall on that. You always have to resort to that. When you come across something that Paul said and it seems contradictory to what Yehoshua said, then you got to stick with what Yehoshua said until you come to the knowledge and revelation and understanding of what Paul is truly talking about. There's a lot of people that say that Paul talks about it don't matter what kind of eat you eat. It's about you having faith. If you have faith to eat those things, then you can eat it. But people don't read at the beginning of the chapter when Paul specified the conversation was about whether you should be a vegetarian or is it okay to eat meat. What Paul is saying, those who want to be vegetarian, there's nothing wrong with that because they're weak in their mind and don't realize that Yah has already given us a list of meat that we can eat that is clean. You see what I'm saying? So that's why Paul said all things are clean and good to eat. The things that God has set aside for us to eat. You see what I'm saying? But people don't really dig into the scriptures. They don't really understand what Paul's talking about a lot of times. That's why Paul's writings is for the advanced reader. You understand? Because see, the New Testament was never called scripture. Never. It was called the Gospels and the letters. Now, when you start dealing with Paul's letters, that's something you must keep in mind. And that is that when you are reading those letters, you are doing what? You are reading someone else's mail. Okay? Now I want you to remember that. When you read Paul's letter, Peter's letters, John's letters, that you are reading somebody else's mail. So when he wrote that letter, when he did that penmanship, he was writing about specific situations that was unique to that particular group of people. You understand? So the writings in Paul's letters are not an end-all, answer-all for everything. You understand? Because you have to take into account what was going on in Corinth, what was going on in Thessalonica. You see what I'm saying? What was going on when he wrote Timothy. You see what I'm saying? So you have to understand that when you're reading Paul's writing, but your foundation must come from the Torah, the Old Testament, because that's what Yehoshua taught. That's what Jesus taught. All the Old Testament scriptures, he constantly quoted Isaiah. He constantly quoted Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Moses. He talked about Moses talking about him, wrote of him. You see what I'm saying? So you have to go and get that foundation first before you can proceed and understand why the Messiah came. What was the purpose of the Messiah? You have to get a solid foundation. Well, anyways, I just want to talk to you a little bit. Be much more to come. I hope this bless you. And like I always say to people that know me, don't take my word for it with the things that I say. Go check Matthew 5 and see if see if Jesus actually said you still got to keep the law. Later on, I'm going to explain to you what Paul was talking about when Paul said you're no longer under the bondage of the law. I hope this bless you. Be encouraged and do your own research. This is the pastor signing out. Be blessed.